Welcome to the better part. Bees, what would we do without them? According to Wikipedia, there are 20,000 species of bees worldwide, and they are found on every continent except Antarctica. Today, we'll be concentrating on the honeybee in the Bay Area. Honeybees pollinate the trees that give us food and produce the honey that sweetens our life. And we've come a long way since the 1800s, when people actually killed the bees in order to harvest the honey. Let's find out the facts and the fiction about the honeybee. From the Santa Clara Valley Beekeepers Guild, I'd like to welcome our guest, Ken McKenzie, Vice President of the Guild. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we start, I should point out to our guests that there's a live hive in the studio today. And perhaps we should take a moment just to address the general fear of bees. These bees are behind glass and they're perfectly safe, but should I be afraid of bees?
Bees are stinging insects, and some people are allergic to them in varying amounts, some to fatal allergies. So it's wise to be cautious of bees, but not to be afraid.
Why do bees sting?
Bees sting defensively. Bees are protecting their stores, they're protecting their hive, and they're social. So they communicate with each other, and they'll sting out of defense.
So are they dangerous or not dangerous?
They can be dangerous.
What should I do, heaven forbid, that I get stung?
If you've never been stung before, immediately get the stinger out of you. The stinger will continue, it's attached to a venom sac, it'll continue to pump venom into your body for a few seconds. So get the stinger out as quickly, and then get someone near you in case that you have a severe allergy and you may have severe allergic response.
How do I know I've got the stinger out?
You can see them, they're visual, and it's small and black, and it'll have a small attachment to a sac. So you find the spot where it hurts and scratch it any way you possibly can.
When did man first gather honey from the honeybee?
Cave paintings from Spain show us about 8,000 years ago, we're guessing, of people gathering honey. In ancient Mesopotamia, in Egypt, in Israel, in the thousands of years ago, people began commercially having hives.
How did the honeybee migrate here?
Native bees have been in America forever, but the Europeanized honeybees that we like a lot came in 1621 with the Pilgrims. They brought them as essential to their food stores.
They seem to dart all around the sky. They go one way, they go the other way. Why do they do that? And why don't they just go in a straight line and make a beeline for it?
Swarming is a division of a hive. In the springtime, or if a queen is failing, the hive will collectively, as a social group, decide to reproduce. They will produce new queens. The young virgin queens will take over the new hive, and they push the old queen out, and she leaves with half the colony following her.
Ken, the hive revolves around the queen bee. So can you explain to us the role of the queen bee and how she's different from other bees?
The queen is the matriarch of the colony. Her job is to keep the production of new bees up, but she also exudes pheromones or smells to keep the hive stable. And the hive is a complex area. And as she is determining what the food source coming in is from other smells in the hive, she'll determine how much she lays. So she's wandering around the hive. She's escorted by an entourage of other bees. The queen cannot feed herself. She doesn't groom herself. There's an entourage constantly attending to her every need, taking her waste away, everything that the queen might need. So as she wanders around the hive, smelling and searching things, she'll lower her abdomen into a cell and lay an egg and fertilize it, and that will become a female bee. If she comes upon a cell that's large, and then she won't fertilize that egg, and that will become a drone. They'll be unfertilized. So she's roaming the hive, looking for the appropriate level of production for her laying. And then when she becomes weak, her smells, her pheromones weaken. The hive gets extremely nervous. At that point, they'll build a special cell, or they will move an egg to a special cell that's larger than the others, and they will lavish that with royal jelly, a special substance they manufacture, and that they will produce a new queen. That new queen will develop in about 16 days. When that new queen's about ready to hatch, they stop feeding the older queen, and they start biting her, chasing her around the hive, and thinning her down because she hasn't flown in a long time. And so about the time those new queen, and if they often will make more than one queen, because they don't want to mess up and to have one get sick or die. So when those new young virgin queens are about to hatch, they push the old queen out the door, and about half of the bees in the colony will take off with her into a swarm. And the new young virgin queens are left behind to keep the colony going.
How many eggs does she lay in a lifetime, and where are they in this hive? Where's the queen in this hive?
Yes, she's hiding. We don't see her in this, but where she will be around what's called the brood area. Often the bees will orient their honey and their pollen to the top of the cells, and they'll lay their eggs in the middle. So there's always a food source for those worker bees inside the hive to feed those young developing babies. So she will be towards the bottom in the middle usually, and as she's wandering around, she will be looking for new opportunities where there's clean cells to lay.
Are these bees happy being here? Do they mind being under the lights like this?
No, this is not natural for them. This is they live in the dark, and they prefer not to be exposed like they are right now.
Where are the eggs?
The eggs are in this center area. When an egg is first laid, it hatches into a larva, and the bees feed that. Every few seconds, they're feeding that larva. Between 5 and 10 days, they'll cover it with wax, and the bee will pupate, similar to a butterfly, and go through metamorphosis. At 21 days, then, the adult bee will emerge.
There's only one queen bee in there?
Yes.
There can never be more than one queen bee in one hive?
Not necessarily.
They don't fight? You don't get another one come in to take over?
Not normally. That's really rare, and some hives may have a weird circumstance that allows that. But when the old queen bee has swarmed away and there's multiple virgin queens hatching, often the first one to hatch will pipe, or she'll send out a shrill little noise. The others will respond often. She will go over and kill all those, her competition. And so they don't prefer to have more than one.
All of these guys in here, they're all workers now?
These are all females, yes. The drones or the males, they don't work. They don't have a stinger. They don't have wax glands to produce wax. And their proboscis isn't generated for going into flowers to get nectar.
Describe what the workers are doing. What are they doing right now?
The worker bees are constantly going around the hive. They're looking for any kind of thing out of place. If they find a dead bee, they will grab that and they'll take it outside and drop it at the front door of the hive. If they sense disease, many bees will have a trait we call hygienic behavior. They will tear open that hive and pull out the diseased larva or pupa and drag it to the front door for foragers to carry away from the hive. So they're constantly cleaning, inspecting, and feeding.
They eat the royal jelly, the babies?
The babies are given, every baby gets a little bit at the beginning, but only the queen bee gets a lot. The rest of the bees the rest of the baby they're growing get a combination of honey and pollen.
Where do they store the honey?
That they'll store it at the edges, and as they bring the nectar in, it's high water content. And so they have glands in their head to help dry out the honey. We also believe it gives us medicinal value as well from those glandular excretions. And the foragers will bring it in a special stomach called their honey crop. And as they fly into the hive, they will meet a house bee, and they will discharge their nectar to the house bee that then puts it into their honey crop and gives it some more enzymes to help dry. That house bee will take it to a cell, usually the periphery of the brood area, and put it into the cell where they begin drying it. And they get it to the point of where less than 18% water, then we'll have honey. and the bees will cover it with wax and cap it.
The bees go and get the pollen. How does the pollen change into honey?
Well, pollen doesn't become honey.
Okay.
Pollen is complex and we still don't understand a lot of it. The pollen is their protein. Like if we're going to In-N-Out, that's our hamburger, where the nectar is their carbohydrate, and they need both. But they can't digest pollen directly. When they bring pollen in on their legs, we're used to seeing it in their hind legs and the big baskets they have. When they bring that in, they can't digest that. So they take it and they put it in a cell, but they also put a little bit of nectar on it, and in the nectar is some organisms from their midgut. And those organisms help to ferment that pollen just a little bit, and it becomes bee bread. So as the fermentation happens, it goes through pretty complex chemistry, and once the cell it breaks down enough where the bees can digest it, then they can consume it as bee bread. So that'll be part of their diet, the protein part.
I've never heard of bee bread. Royal jelly, but
Yes.
not bee bread.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How far do they go to get the pollen? Is they just keep in their local area, or can they go quite far afield?
Bees are very practical, and so they want to go as short a distance for the highest quality food they can get. We think they may go as much as 5 miles in their foraging, but they expend a lot of energy to go there, so they'd rather go as close to home as they can and come back as quickly.
You brought some honey in here, and I notice it's all different colours. I go into the supermarket and it's all different colours. I don't know, is one better than another? Why are they different colours?
The color is based on the plant it came from. Tupelo honey will be different from clover honey, will be different from sage honey, and every honey will have characteristics of the flowers that the bees brought in. And it's not always one particular flower. The bees are going to multiple places often. And the time of year will matter too. So whatever's blooming, that's where the bees are going, and that's what they're bringing back. And so every hive will differ in the time of year or the food source coming into it.
How much honey can you expect to get from your hive?
My hives produce about 72 pounds, average across America, about 100 pounds a hive, but that varies a lot.
Why does it vary so much?
Seasons vary, rain varies, the plants, it's all based on what the plants are doing.
How do you harvest the honey? How do you get the honey out of the hive?
We have to evaluate when the bees have made more than they need. When they have more than they need to sustain themselves, then we'll harvest that largesse. And so that additional honey then, most of us will wait until the bees have capped it. When the bees are drying the nectar out and it gets that 18% water content, then it cannot rot. It's too dry for bacteria. It's safe for consumption. And so we have honey that's thousands of years old that hasn't rotted. It's crystallized, but it hasn't rotted. And so most beekeepers will wait for that capping to happen, and then we'll take our honey out of our hives and extract it through centrifuge usually, and then we'll filter it roughly and bottle it.
You said an interesting thing. You talked about the honey crystallizing.
Yes.
It goes crunchy. It does that in my cupboard. Is it still good to eat? Does it still has all the nutrients or not?
So it's perfectly fine, and it has all the nutrients. And actually, people in many parts of the world call that set honey, because all honey outside of Tupelo doesn't crystallize, but most honey will crystallize given temperature and time. It's just a crystallization process of sugars, because honey is sugar.
When you're trying to take the honey out of the hive, you must have to wear your protective clothing, which we have in the back here. Is it dangerous taking the honey? Obviously you don't take it unless there's an excess, so they don't really need it.
In the different times of the year will be different in the aggressiveness of the bees. And each hive will have a different genetic tendency towards aggressiveness too. Some bees are milder, and as you're taking their honey, they're busy. So I'll brush them off the frames, and I'll put them in another box to take away. Often, they're not that upset with me. In the fall, when winter is coming, and they're concerned about their stores, they'll be a lot more cranky about me coming in to take their food.
So you have to time it just right?
I time it around when I can get to it too. There's a balance. And when I can, In the springtime, often, when there's what's called a nectar flow, when all the plants are blooming like crazy, um, sometimes we have to take the honey off, because if the bees don't have room in their hive, they will swarm because the hive is too congested. So sometimes the bees will tell us when they need to have that honey pulled off. Sometimes it's for our own intent. It's time to harvest and we want to extract for our commercial purposes.
I heard the term hive collapse. What's hive collapse?
A term came out called colony collapse disorder in the early 80s, and it's been fairly complex, and there's been considerable research gone to now. We're still researching it. My favorite phrase is death by 1,000 cuts, to where this is a social organism. It's individual biological critters, but they also communicate and they also decide things collectively. It makes them fascinating. So when a colony collapses, it's complex. What we're believing now is it's not just one silver bullet that will kill a hive, but it's multiple contributing factors that just make it too hard for that colony to sustain itself, and they just fail and give up.
What can we do to help that not happen?
The primary factor seems to be loss of food, that the bees are starving. And as we're feeding the world, which is hard enough, we're choosing to grow crops in large areas, monoculturing. And so that works efficiently for farming, but when you have a crop that comes in blossom for a few weeks and then it's done, the rest of the year it's a desert now to bees. And we're keeping our farms and we're keeping our orchards and our land clean of weeds. Those are food for bees. So, and we're mulching everywhere to keep our costs down, to be responsible, in weed control. So the food source for bees is diminishing, and that's hard on them. The second is we have a number of, in America, and in Europe as well, we have the Varroa mite, called Varroa destructor, a big parasitic mite that sucks their blood. And if I imagined a mosquito the size of a chicken on me sucking my blood, that's a big problem. But the bees also get secondary infections from those piercings of their body, similar to us getting malaria or typhoid. And so the bees are struggling with a whole host of diseases from these parasitic mites and other diseases they face. So they're starving, they're having diseases. Then if we add the pesticides they encounter in the orchard environment, in the farming environment, and it's a host of fungicides, of a variety of different things, and often in complex mixes, that third hit just can be too much for a colony if they're just trying to survive.
Is there anything that the bees do to keep themselves healthy?
Yes, they're amazing. Bees don't just go to our favorite plants to gather their nectar and pollen. They will go to trees and gather wax and oils. Trees have oleochemicals that they use to protect themselves from bacteria and viruses. And so the bees will opportunistically go and gather those oils and waxes, and they smear that all over their hive. We call it propolis. Some cultures use propolis for medicinal purposes, but the bees use propolis to defend themselves. And we're still learning a lot about that. And also bees, certain genetic tendencies are called hygienic behavior. So when bees have a disease in their colony, they will dig that diseased bee out and drag it away and drop it far away from the hive. And some bees, we don't know for sure, we call it altruistic suicide, to when bees will, they're sick, they will themselves fly away from the colony and die.
If I'd like to have a hive in my garden, how would I go about that?
Well, first off, finding the rules of your local municipality. Each municipality has a whole code that you can check out. The second is the Santa Clara Beekeepers Guild. And every county has multiple guilds. And so there's advice, guidance, mentoring, and all those factors are part of the guild structure.
And what's the website?
www.beeguild.org.
www.beeguild.org.
Yes.
Besides your work with the Santa Clara Valley Beekeepers Guild, you also go out into the community to educate people about bees. You were at the Cupertino Library recently, and we watched you enthusiastically teach a group of young students. They really got involved and asked questions. You demonstrated the importance of honeybees to our well-being in a way that they couldn't fail to learn. What a wonderful program for the library.
Hi, I'm Val Jeffrey with A Better Part, and I'm here at the Cupertino Library with Elizabeth Bartholomew, who is the librarian here in the children's section, and we have just watched a wonderful demonstration on bees. Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm delighted.
The library obviously puts on different things for the children to do. Why did you pick bees?
This program is part of a larger program that the library is offering this spring. We're in the middle of a pilot project called STEAM Leads, where we're offering STEAM-related programs to children sort of based on research questions. We want them to learn how to do research, and we want to offer them programs that make the research interesting. So March is the first month. I got the first month. And we've had the Bee Guild come before, and they're very interesting. Bees are very exciting to the kids and grown-ups. It's an exciting topic. So we built our research theme around bees this month. The research theme is the colony collapse disorder, and we're asking kids to do a little research into it and come up with ideas of how to save the bees. We're going to be superheroes this month. We're going to save the bees. So Ken is our first program. He brought his bees and talked about colony collapse.
I'm here with Akil, and we've just had a wonderful demonstration on bees by Ken, and I'm going to find out how he liked it. Did you enjoy that presentation?
Yeah, it was fun.
What does the queen bee do?
The queen bee lays all the eggs so that the colony can become bigger.
Did you know that before you came today?
Not really.
No? What was your favorite part about it?
My favorite part was tasting the honey and see which areas give the most tastiest honey.
And how many areas were there?
3
And which one did you like best?
Cupertinos.
We commend you, Ken, for what you're doing for the community. It's such a valued contribution.
What about if I have a hive in the garden and I don't want it?
Well, that's frequent. The Bee Guild has a list of people that catch swarms in the springtime, and that's fun. I like to do that. But also we do a number of people that do live bee removals or rescues, and I do that as well. And that's fascinating work. The last option would be an exterminator. You know, if there's just a real health concern or a public safety concern, you know. But most of the exterminators or the municipalities will call the Bee Guild first, and so then we'll try and prioritize that.
If I have got a hive in my garden, because you brought up an interesting point, are my neighbours going to be happy with me or not happy with me?
It depends on your relationship with your neighbor. My neighbors know about my hives, and they support that, and then I'm sensitive to their needs, to where if they're having a large number of people over, I will talk to them about that. And if they have allergic issues, you know, I will be concerned about that. And also, I will teach my neighbors about the bees. I think that seems to be the biggest issue, that when people are aware of what the risks are, what the fear or not fear, and beekeepers also will learn to provide water source for your bees, so they're not going to your neighbor's swimming pools. You can provide a way to disturb their flight path so that the bees aren't flying across the sidewalk where everyone's walking. And so the beekeeper can work with their site setting and their neighbors to make the bees less of an issue for that.
Honeybees have really been declining of late. What impact does that have on us?
1/3 of our food source is dependent on honeybees for pollination. Originally, in ancient times, wax was the #1 use for bees. Honey became important to us, but in our current day, pollination of food production is our #1 need of honeybees. So as honeybees decline, our dependence on them to pollinate our food is seriously impacted. The commercial beekeepers are losing about 30% of their bees every year now, and we're at a tipping point.
Does it impact us when the farmers farm lots of things in separate places? For instance, I know the almond crop is concentrated in one area. How can you get that many bees there at one time?
Nearly 1 million hives were transported across the country for the pollination of almonds this year. That cost to the almond farmers is huge to get that level of movement of animals, and the loss to the beekeepers is tremendous too. The other challenge to that is that all these people are bringing their bees with all their diseases to one spot, so they can all share their diseases with each other. So there's a lot of challenge to that concept. It's much better to have diverse crops that the bees can hit and get a variety of food sources from. That's challenging.
When they pollinated the almonds, though, do you have to take them all back where they came from?
The commercial people that pollinate can't afford just to take them there and bring them back. So they'll devise very complex movement from, say, from almonds to Washington to do apples, to go to do blueberries, they'll circulate the nation doing different crops and working contracts with different farmers to try and pay for all that transportation.
Honeybees are so fascinating, and I can see you have a passion for them, and I appreciate you bringing them here today and telling us all about the honeybee. Thank you for coming. You can find a selection of our programs on YouTube and on Roku, and also through the Santa Clara County Library System. Thank you for watching. I'm Val Jeffrey. Please join us again next week on The Better Part.